Okay, so you got your 3D files for your clone, and now I'm going to kind of walk through what you could do and how you could use Unity as a place to build your clone and then start putting clones into games. And so this is something that I think is pretty straightforward. So like it doesn't require a lot of knowledge of Unity to get started. And then once you have gotten started, and of course it opens up the world as far as what you can do from there. So I am a engineer for DAZ 3D. So we're the company that helped Artifact deliver the 3D files. And so I'm also a metaverse enthusiast and very excited about what Artifact is doing as far as creating a creator network to build the metaverse as in a decentralized metaverse. And so this is going to be kind of walking through the steps from once you've downloaded your files for your clone, so you can see all the individual files there, up through actually putting it into a game. So we're going to start here. So first off is like you'll have all your files and you need to unzip them. So I'm going to just go ahead and use the default here, extract all, and just keep the default. And then I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these, and I'll be back in a moment. So here's all the files. They've all been extracted now. And so now we could actually go into Unity. So you could go to Unity and you could download what's called the Unity Hub here. It's basically the default download you'll find if you just go to unity3d.com. And then, so this allows you to install different versions of Unity. Go ahead and just install the latest Unity, and then you'll want to create a new project here. So for this, we're just going to do a 3D core. That's the default setting because what we're going to do is piece together the clone before we do anything else. So I'm just going to call this the clone builder. And so it's going to create this project, and that will take a moment as it kind of gets it set up. So we'll come back when that load is complete. So Unity's up now. So this is just the default 3D scene. Pretty basic. You can see up here is the hierarchy of what's in the scene right now. There's just a camera and a light. So pretty straightforward. The project is down below. This shows you what files are a part of the project. And the only thing here is scenes. So it's just this sample scene. That's all in there. So what we need to do is we need to start importing the clone assets. So we're going to go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package. So this is where you're going to go to your clone. And so this is the clone that we're making, this one, 1776 and or 17776. And so this is one of the ones that is owned by Taffy or DAZ 3D. And so so what you need to do is you need to start importing the assets. So I'm going to start with the tech jogger, and so I'm going to make this a female. And so we'll go in here and you see that there's a bunch of different formats. So that's all the different choices. So you could build either male or female body. We're going to go with female, Unity. So there's this Unity package. So I'm just going to hit open on that. So that brings up this dialog and I go ahead and import it. And so you can see that now we have this tech jogger. So just to organize things, I'm going to go ahead and create a folder that's just going to be clone X and drag that in there. And then we're going to go through and do the same thing with all the rest of the assets. Like you only need to do one of the pairs of pants. Like there's leggings, jogger, and actually leggings might be better for this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and import these as well. Um, and so you get the idea here. Then you're going to basically need to go through and do the same for the rest of them. And I will come back when that all is complete. So now we've got all the files imported. They're all under the CloneX folder. And so there was one set of files that you couldn't import because they didn't have a Unity package. And so I'm going to do that right now. So this is the DNA. So the DNA is just basically a set of textures. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder that's called DNA. And So instead of doing import package, I'm going to do import new asset. So you could do this by right clicking here, or you could go from the assets, import new asset. And so in this case, I want to go back to the DNA, robot combined. So in here under texture, there could be 4 textures. Often there's just 3, and import them for this particular clone as a robot. And so I went ahead and imported those in. Okay, because I didn't do it from the directory, it put them in the root directory, so I'll just drag them and put them into the DNA folder. Okay, so and so we've got all the textures here. Now we're going to start by bringing the base body. So that's going to be called character neutral neutral or something along those lines, depending on what assets you have here with your clone. And so there is one of these things under this folder that's called ready to use. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to drag it into the scene, but we just basically click on it and then drag it up here. And so now we got a clone in the scene. So we can zoom in on it. And there we see we have the base body of a female clone. So, there's no eyes, so there's not much to it yet, but we have basically the building blocks to build from. Now I'm going to start adding the additional things here. So we'll start with the eyes and so we want the eyes, robot blue. That's what came with this clone. And so what you're looking for in here is the one that's FBX, so it's the 3D model. And so how you want to do it is you just open up this, it's just like a folder. There's a geometry folder under there, and you can see that there's the suit and then the head. Those are the 2 main components to start with. I want to add the eyes. So I dragged it to the wrong place. So put it under geometry and there. So we can see that the eyes are now there. So we got the default blue robot eyes. You notice that she doesn't look like a robot yet. And so let's do that next. So that's the DNA. So we see here these textures, and we want to apply it to this clone. So we're going to click on the head. So and so you can see that at the head geo selected. And so there's what's called a skin mesh renderer, and that's basically the head. It's called a skin mesh because as the clone moves, then the face and the textures move along with it properly. And now we have the shader, so that basically is how it's rendered. And this is what we want to adjust and add these different textures for. So the albedo is the main texture. It's also diffuse will work for that. So that's what the D is for, is diffuse. So we put that there. Now it already looks like a robot. There's the metallic right here. That's what the M stands for. So I'm going to put that under the metallic. So you can see now it's a little bit more shiny. Then there's the roughness map. So we'll put that for roughness, replacing the default clone roughness. And then finally a normal map. So we're going to grab that and put it there. It's going to complain that it's not marked as normal map. So you just mark it by doing fix now. So now this is starting to look like a robot. So we got that first stage now. Let's go ahead and start putting the clothing and other things on it. So I'm going to drag the clothing, same thing, put the geometry. We've got this ice cube in, goes right there. The tiara goes right here with the hair. Eyelashes right there. That's going to just go onto the geometry. And then here's the eyebrows, just called robot. So there's the eyebrows. And then, so you could have a choice of the clothing that comes with the clone. So as you could see, like, it only covers the top half from the original clone. And so the bottom half, we could put sandals on, which I will go ahead and put these on. And just because we're not putting them individually, we don't have to use this prefab. We just drag it on like everything else. And I'm going to go ahead and use the leggings. I might choose between the leggings and the jogger. Put that there. Oops, I put it in the wrong place. Okay, So I think that probably works pretty well with that top. We could just take a look at what the tech, so we could just go up here and turn them off for now just to see what the tech jogger looks like. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with the leggings. So I'll go ahead and delete this item and then turn on the leggings again. So that seems to work pretty well. And so now I'm just going to double check again, uh, get a nice view like this, and then look here. So yeah, as you can see, it looks like everything's good to go. And so we're going to go ahead from there, and now I've got a piece together clone. So this now I could use in any Unity game that I build off of. So I'm actually going to start by changing this name. So we're just going to call it the clone name. So it's clone 17776. Um, and you could, of course, if you've got multiple clones, you could have multiple in the same scene. Um, but now we've got basically a prefab for this clone, or we have a built model for this clone. And I'm going to make a prefab by just taking this and dragging it just under Clone X, and I'm going to say original prefab. So a prefab is basically you could put it into the scene as is. You don't have to piece together all the pieces again. You've done it once, you don't need to do it again. So this is all ready to go. Um, One more thing that I am going to do here, because if we go to the body here, um, we need to make one more last change. Just trust me on this, and I'll explain why later. So it's animation type when you click on this character. So it's base character model again, the character neutral neutral. We want to change this to a humanoid. And so the reason for this is because Unity has like basically this humanoid rig. So if any animations are targeting towards a humanoid rig, you could use them with this clone. And because a clone is a humanoid, then that works. So we could hit apply here, and so that is going to basically make this clone marked as a human. It's automatically configured the model. You could go in and look at it if you went in there, if you wanted to tweak it at all, but it is good to go so they can use like any animations that are targeting this humanoid rig. So now going back to the prefab we created, so we've got this prefab that's made up of all those parts, and I'm going to save this, export this out. So export this package. So what this will allow me to do is just like we did with imported all those packages to kind of build this clone, I'm going to export a package that can then be used in other scenes and other projects, Unity projects. So right now all I'm doing is building this model so that I can then use it wherever I want and use it in multiple different games and applications. And so it's going to by default come up and it'll give you like what are all the assets that are attached to this clone with its include dependencies, and you're just going to go ahead and export. And so I'm going to put it to that folder right here, and we'll just call it clone that and save it out. And so now this is compressing that package and it's good to go. I didn't mention before, but like, don't worry about these little errors about the DDS files. We have them there, but Unity doesn't bring them in, and you don't need them for Unity. So that's fine. Okay, so now that we have our Unity package, we're going to actually create a game to put it in. Now, so Unity actually comes with some good templates. So if you go back to Unity, like the Unity Hub, you could go to New Project. You notice that there's a bunch of other things that are in here that are listed as templates, which are basically starter projects. And so like basically Unity, some of them come with more assets than others. Like these are basically empty projects just set up with a basic camera and such. Um, then you can kind of go through and see some of the other options here. So Cinematic Studio is kind of an interesting one. Might be a bit of work, but basically you can create animations using this. Like it's a whole studio suite for basically creating 3D animations. And so you can put your character in here and have it interact with things in the scene. So this is kind of a cool thing. Third person, I think, is going to be the default go-to. So this is basically where you could create a third-person game where you can run around and basically have a platformer or any other kind of third-person action type game that you might think of. They also have like so you could probably skip the 2D ones. The karting one is pretty interesting. It's actually pretty easy to put a clone in here as well. And then you basically have a Mario Kart style game. It's pretty basic, but it's a micro game, which means that Unity kind of treats it separately, where they have their own ecosystem for that, where there's a bunch of plugins specifically for it, and it's designed to help you learn, how to build this out and add to it. So that's another good one to choose. There's this one, which is really nice as far as like showing off the advanced lighting model, and we will get to this in a bit. But this scene has a bunch of lighting built into it that shows the power of Unity with the high definition renderer. So this is the high definition renderer is what's used for like high-end PCs and consoles. So it's less for mobile games. It's too intense for a mobile game, but like it works great for like the high end PCs. Then URP is like, so this one actually has a pretty good scene built with it too that has the lighting set up. So it's interesting to walk around and you could kind of build games within that. This one less so much. So this is for the universal rendering pipeline, which is used for mobile experiences like web experiences as well as phone experiences. But the scene isn't very interesting. There's not much in it. They're just showing some of the basic lighting there. You could put your clone into VR. So there's a basic one so that you can, either have it in the scene or and be a part of it, have it be you. You could take your clone with an AR app and basically have your phone like pointed at your desk, and you could see your clone right next to you on your desk. First person, I tend to avoid for this purpose because you don't get to see your clone when you're in first person unless you do some additional things. And this one is targeted towards 3D, so it's just kind of set up already for doing mobile development. The Lego Micro Game won't really work. Their characters are very minifig specific, so you can't just bring a humanoid character into it and expect it to work. So unfortunate because this is a pretty cool system. And so that's pretty much it is what would be interesting. But I'm going to create a third person right now. So, and then we'll just call this clone third person. And again, I think this is probably going to be the primary go-to. So we'll go ahead and create that project, and that'll take a moment as Unity loads that project up. All right, so it's loaded up. So you can see that we've got the third person template loaded, and it's actually got a bunch of documentation that comes with it that you can go and make sure that you could get some additional things and understanding about how this works. But the main thing here is that we do have in the scene this character, and so they have a robot. That's a default. So we could just kind of hit play here. So this will get it up and running, just to kind of show you what you can do in here. So as you can see, you got a robot, and then you could use WASD controls, shift to run, and so this allows you to go through the environment, and then from here you can hit space to jump. Okay, so let's see if we can get a clone in there. So we hit play, and it resets back to how it was. So we got what's called this player armature. We do not need this robot because we're going to replace it with a clone, and we don't need the skeleton. So I'm just going to hide them, and then here's where we're going to go import that package we created. So we go import custom package. So we're in that folder that we put it. So there's that clone, which is the completed clone. See why it's important to be able to have that completed clone. And we're going to import this package, which will take a moment as it pulls in all these assets, and you'll notice that there's going to be a CloneX folder here that comes as it distributes the assets. So basically, that's all you have to do to bring it to a new scene. That's why it's nice to have it as an asset package like that. So just about done here. Okay. So now we have the CloneX folder and we have the prefab that we created last time around. So it's taking a moment as it does stuff. Okay, so we can see that there's the clone right there, and it's showing up pink in here. Don't worry about that. And then we're going to drag it right here on onto this player armature. And so there we go. We got the clone. So you see that it turned pink. So the shader. So now the default shader is for a clone is the like Autodesk Interactive, because basically it's an export from like a Maya export originally. And so that doesn't work in this scene because this is using the universal render pipeline. We was discussing that, where this is like a more universal. It's not the high definition. So its textures are mapped up a little bit differently. And so in order for it to render properly in this scene, we're going to have to change the shader to the universal render pipeline lit. Okay, so you can see that it's going to have problems because the base map is not set up. So if we go under this DNA folder, select this again. So we want to put the diffuse onto that base map. So that base map is the analog. It was albedo before. Now it's called base map, and this particular shader, the universal render, it's already got the metallic, so that was fine. We got the normal map, so that was fine. But there's not really a place for the roughness in this particular one, so that's fine. Now we got to do the same thing for the head. So both of these are set up as Autodesk. So again, I'm just going to click on that so I know where that mouth is. And we're going to change this universal render pipeline lit. Okay. Change the base map of that. So this is just like for the mouth inside, which we're not going to see unless we actually do like facial animation of some kind. Okay, so going back where that's the mouth bag, now the head itself, we want to adjust this also. So universal render pipeline lit. Again, we have to change the base map. So we're going to go back to the DNA folder, bring the head up again, and we're going to put the diffuse map right there. We already got the metallic. There's no roughness, and then this already got the normal. So we're back to having our clone as we expect. And so she should be good to go there. So we have the clone attached. Now, when we look at this clone, it has what's called this avatar, and we can see it right here. And so that's important for animation. Now, this player armature is already set up for animation, and they're using like this armature avatar instead, because it was for that default robot that they had in here. So we want to replace that with the one for the clone. So now what we've been able to do is replace the clones, the default robot with the clone. Now let's hit play. Now, as long as all the animation is hooked up, then you get something like this, where now you can see that the idle loop is just fine. And now as we walk or run, we have a clone in the scene. And could hop, and we could already see the potential here. That you could hop around and you can create a thing. And you did notice, ooh, what happened there. There's, it's suddenly like sometimes the clothing will disappear. Let's see if I can make it happen. Yeah, so there's a problem there, and so we're going to solve that next. So I'll pause and so to fix the disappearing assets, so we're going back to the clone here, and we're looking at this clone. Now, if you click a couple times, you'll see that the shirt is highlighted. So we have a bounding box around this shirt. and you can see that is this white bounding box, and it only is covering the shirt itself. So the problem is that if the camera goes like where it no longer has a piece of that bounding box in place, then this thing will disappear from view. And we don't want it to disappear from view unless the whole clone is not being isn't visible. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the size of this bounding box, and we're going to change it to kind of match the clone. So if we set it to 1, and then we just kind of adjust this downward, then this bounding box it doesn't have to be exact. So that's what we want to do for all the individual pieces. So we just go into each of the geo. You can see that this, like IceCubein, has a very small bounding box. So we just really care about it vertically. But if something goes off, well, I'm changing the size. I don't want to change the size. I wanted to change the position of it. So it's something like that. Okay, so you can kind of see what needs to be done. So as we do that, here, and we readjust it, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So now these things won't disappear when we change the camera angle. If they disappear, it's because I haven't touched them yet. Okay. So you can see that it doesn't disappear as we look from the bottom or the top or anything. So it's in a better shape. Okay, so now we made some changes to this clone to make it fit. Notice that we had to tweak the materials and some of the other things, and it's basically so that it's a URP, like for the universal rendering pipeline is the primary change. So if we go back into the CloneX folder here, we might want to have a variant for this. Because there's an original, and we don't want to overwrite that because it has the textures for the HD textures. So we're going to drag it over here again, and we'll just an original prefab rather than a variant, and we're going to call this URP clone. Okay, so now this is set up all for the rendering, universal rendering pipeline, and then what we could go is once we're into another scene where we want to use the more HD, the high definition textures and everything, or not the textures, but the shaders for it, then we'll want to readjust those things that we just adjusted, which is the geometry bounding boxes, so that it doesn't go off, like the individual parts of the avatar don't disappear. Okay, so that problem is solved, and now we have a URP. So, and what we could do is do that as we did before, export a package, just go ahead and do the default there, and we're going to call this a URP clone. And save that. And so now we have both a URP and then an HD clone. That we could use in the various different kind of Unity scenes. Now, if you're focused on one or the other, then you don't really need to have two, and you could just update the existing one. But in this case, we're doing that. Okay, so now we have clone packages. I'm going to show you like what in the end you could do as you start getting deeper into this. So far we've done some pretty basic stuff. So for that, I'm going to open up another scene. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to do one more thing here while we're here. So looking at the scene, we have this player armature, and this is basically the ability for us to be able to, and there's this follow camera. Like these two together combine to make it possible for us to have like that third person experience. And then we could basically take these things, just like we did with the clone, we could have them pre-built so that we could carry this with us into another scene. And so I'm just going to show how we could do that if we wanted to do that. So the follow camera is something that's kind of nice because it kind of follows that camera. Player armature is this other piece right here that is all set up for the clone, and it has a bunch of information on how to basically move through the environment and how it works. But these combined together make basically a third person experience. So if I could create like basically a basic empty object, which is going to be our third person experience. Okay, and then I'm going to basically put these two pieces within it. So they're part of this. And then doing that same kind of trick that we've done before, we create a new prefab. And this is like the third person clone. So therefore, we have a whole package that's all set up. If we do this, where we export a package, you notice that it pulls in a bunch of other stuff. So it's bringing in everything that is necessary to make this a third person experience. So the jump, the moving, the running and walking, the idles, all the scripts, and then plus all the clone stuff. Now you could take the clone stuff out if you just want to have this framework in place, or you could put the clone in and you basically have a third person system that you could just drop into any scene, which can be pretty useful if there's a scene that it has things in it that you'd want to use, such as that HD scene that we were talking about, which is what I'm going to be doing next. So all we do there is export it, and again we're going to do the same kind of thing, but this time um, showing that this one has even more to it. And so we export that, then that's going to have everything with it. All right, so now we start talking about where we could go from understanding and being able to pull these clones into other places within the Unity system. So I've got a new environment here. So this one has a whole bunch of things to it, as you can see here. So we are in, I kind of talked before earlier, this is a HD scene, an HDRP scene. So this is the one that comes when you do the basic HDR mapping scene. Obviously not like I've added a lot of things since then, but the scene itself is a pretty cool scene. Like all these drones and stuff like that are all new things that I've added. And we'll do a walkthrough of this in a little bit, but you can see that I've got these little robots that are following me. So that in itself can be a bit of fun. Don't look too closely at this animation, but we added some ball physics. So yes, you could do sports with your clones. So that was there. I specifically made this excessive as far as like how much force she puts on these balls, but just for the fun. We've got some platforms. So by hopping on these platforms, I could go up and down. There's even these moving platforms that I stick with as it moves, and then the vertical one up and down platform as well. So we can hop up there if I can manage to do it right. If I could be good enough at this. So here we go. And so then we also have these drones. You can kind of imagine the kind of things. There's even this little glowing thing right there, which is kind of like a teleporter of some kind. So you can see like the workings of various different kinds of games that could be done with this once you start understanding how to use Unity in that way. We've got some more drones in here, but what I really like is this little scene right here. This really shows off the lighting capabilities. Like there's a lot of talk about how Unreal Engine does amazing things, which it does, but Unity's made a lot of progress in the last couple of years as far as in improving their lighting models and other systems. And we can go in here now. This is more of an interior lighting area, but it kind of demonstrates some of the capabilities. Yeah, I have to fix the camera issue with this clone. I don't have it, but there we go. So this is a demonstration of some of the things, and I hope it sparks some ideas of what to do in the future. So again, this was like Daz 3D. We are the people that help Artifact get these 3D files delivered, and we're hoping to continue to work with the community and work with people as we kind of build this metaverse together. And so excited to be participate. If you have ideas or have things that you've shared, please tag me. I'm at Livestream, and I'll be hanging out in the Discord and talking about Unity. That's my forte, but I love Unreal and some of those other things too, and I love to see all the things that people are doing with
Blender and other things. But I'm excited for what we could do as a community, and so I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you.